A black student walks into his elite calculus class, and the professor freezes. Then in front of everyone, he gives Jamal an unsolvable equation not even grad students can crack. The room goes silent. It's a trap. If he solves it, they'll call it cheating. If he fails, they'll say he never belonged. What Jamal does next? It changes everything, and exposes a racist secret the university tried to bury.
Stick around because this isn't just a math class, it's a battlefield. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below.
The air in Hamilton Hall 3A1 felt crisp too crisp. The kind of artificial cold that made shoulders hunch and nerves sharpen. Ceiling fans spun overhead in a low, rhythmic buzz, while rows of students trickled in, settling into seats with the excited energy of a new semester. It was the first day of Advanced Calculus 2 at Chesterton University, one of the South's most elite and quietly segregated academic institutions. Jamal Carter stepped through the door with cautious steps. 19 years old, Atlanta-born, scholarship kid, first generation, black. He carried a modest laptop in one hand, a notebook thick with handwritten equations in the other. His jeans were clean, his sneakers modest. No chains, no flash, just quiet determination. As he crossed the threshold, conversation dipped, heads turned. Jamal didn't look up. He felt it, the static tension in the room. He scanned for a familiar face, or at least a neutral one. Nothing, only white. Every single seat filled by pale polished students, mostly male. A few Asian students clustered up front, none black, not one. He found an empty seat near the second row from the back, and slid into it. The skin on his neck prickled. Not fear, not surprise, just a familiar alertness. That radar black students in white spaces develop early. The professor entered 10 seconds later. Tall, mid-60s, white hair cut razor sharp, tweed blazer with elbow patches, a face sculpted from dry skepticism. Dr. Leonard Grayson. He stopped halfway through walking to the board. His eyes locked on Jamal. His brows twitched, not in surprise, but in disbelief, as if someone had slipped a red sock into a load of white laundry. "You're in the wrong class, aren't you?" he said flatly, in front of everyone. Silence. No one laughed. But no one said anything either. Jamal looked up. Cool. Calm. Measured. "No sir," he said, voice steady. "This is Advanced Calculus 2. Room." Grayson didn't respond immediately. Just watched Jamal for a beat too long. Then turned to the board. "Let's begin," he said, as if Jamal's presence were a technical glitch he'd work around. Jamal leaned back in his seat, jaw tightening. He'd dealt with this before. The tone, the assumption, the challenge wrapped in politeness. But this one felt different. Grayson didn't just doubt him. He was insulted by him. The class began. Grayson started writing on the board with the kind of speed that presumed everyone was already caught up. No introductions. No syllabus. Just a blur of symbols. Integrals, summations, epsilon delta limits. He barked equations like commands. Students scrambled to keep up. Jamal kept pace. He'd studied the summer ahead, watched MIT lectures, solved every problem in Stewart's 8th edition. He wasn't just ready, he was hungry. But Grayson wasn't watching the class. He was watching Jamal. 10 minutes in, he paused, turned. He looked at Jamal directly. "Since you seem confident, perhaps you'd like to help the class with something." Jamal looked up, cautious. Grayson turned back to the board and erased everything. He wrote a problem, a long, brutal sequence of symbols. Partial differential equations, nested integrals, a discontinuity trap buried inside the notation. Jamal recognized it instantly.
This wasn't coursework. This wasn't even in the syllabus. It was a problem he'd only seen in one obscure research journal. He remembered because it had never been solved in closed form, only approximated.
The class went silent again. "Come up and solve it," Grayson said. Jamal didn't move. He scanned the equation. He could attempt it. He might even get halfway. But he knew the trap. If he solved it, they'd claim he cheated. If he didn't, they'd confirm he didn't belong. Trick box. Jamal stood anyway. He walked slowly to the board. Picked up the marker. For a moment, the room felt like a courtroom. Every eye a silent juror. Every breath held. He began to write. But instead of solving, he annotated. "This problem," he said calmly, "is unsolvable in its current form. The integral diverges unless we assign a boundary condition. There's no defined domain, murmurs behind him. The Asian student in the front row glanced at his notes, confused. Jamal continued. This is more of a theoretical framework than a problem. It's designed to collapse. Grayson tilted his head. So you won't attempt it? He asked, voice smooth as ice. I just did, Jamal replied, capping the marker. He turned back to his seat. Grayson watched him the entire way. No smile, no nod, just a look of disdain barely concealed behind academic detachment. Class continued. The problem remained on the board for the rest of the lecture, unsolved, like a silent dare, a message. As the bell rang, students filed out. Grayson erased the board slowly. Jamal stood to leave when he heard Grayson say, low and cold, confidence without mastery is dangerous. Jamal didn't respond, but he knew now. This wasn't going to be a normal semester. Grayson wasn't just skeptical. He had a plan. Dr. Grayson writes an unsolvable problem on the board and singles out Jamal. The next class came faster than Jamal expected. He hadn't slept much the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, that unsolvable equation flashed on the inside of his eyelids. It wasn't just the math, it was the message. When he entered Hamilton Hall again, Dr. Grayson was already there, chalk in hand. The room buzzed with soft chatter, but Jamal noticed the glances, the whispers. He caught a fragment. Someone in the back muttered, "He's the one who called out Grayson last class." Jamal took his seat near the back, pulling out his notes. He had come early to review the syllabus and last year's assignments. Every topic, every theorem, every proof, they were manageable. Hard, yes, but fair. He had spent the entire weekend studying them, preparing to redeem himself silently. The bell rang. Grayson turned, chalk still in hand, his gray eyes sweeping across the room like a lighthouse beam. Then they stopped on Jamal. Without a word, he began writing on the board. The first problem looked simple enough. Find the derivative of 3x. A wave of relief passed through the class. Pens clicked. Laptops opened. But Grayson wasn't done. He kept writing. Below the basic derivative, he wrote another equation. Far longer, full of Greek letters and nested functions. It wasn't from the textbook. Jamal knew immediately. This was advanced real analysis. The kind of problem most undergrads wouldn't see for another 2 years. Grayson capped his marker, turned and faced the class. All right, he said evenly. Let's see who's paying attention. His tone carried that same razor-thin edge of superiority. Mr. Carter. A faint murmur moved through the rows like wind through leaves. Jamal looked up slowly. Yes, sir. Would you care to walk us through this one? Jamal's throat went dry. That wasn't on the syllabus, sir. Grayson smiled thinly. Mathematics doesn't live inside a syllabus. Let's test your instincts, shall we? The room went silent again. A few students looked between Jamal and the board. Some smirked. Others simply waited for the show. Jamal hesitated, then stood. His hands felt heavy as he picked up his notebook. He walked to the front, the squeak of his sneakers echoing in the cold lecture hall. He stared at the equation. It was brutal. Something about continuous functions and convergence limits. A trick question disguised as elegance. He knew bits of it, but not the full depth. He turned to Grayson. You want me to prove or simplify? Whatever you think is appropriate, Grayson replied, voice dripping with challenge. A ripple of laughter passed through the room. Jamal's jaw tensed. He turned back to the board. He started writing. Carefully. Slowly. He broke the expression apart into pieces, applying known theorems, substituting values. His hand moved fast but precise. He was trying to build logic out of chaos. But halfway through, he hit a wall. A contradiction. He paused. He could feel eyes boring into his back. Grayson's voice sliced through the silence. Problem? No, Jamal said. Just verifying the domain. Oh, take your time, Grayson said, stepping closer. We all want to see the magic. The sarcasm landed like a slap. Jamal continued, forcing himself to breathe evenly. He added another line, his handwriting tightening. The result didn't look right. He knew it. He was missing a definition. Something subtle. He stared at the function again. Then it hit him. The question wasn't even well defined. It contained an undefined discontinuity. A trick deliberate and cruel. He put the chalk down. This expression diverges for non-compact intervals, he said quietly. It doesn't converge under the given conditions. There's no solvable limit. Grayson's lips curved slightly. So you're saying you can't solve it? I'm saying it's not solvable the way it's written, Jamal replied. A girl in the front row whispered something and laughed. Grayson uncapped his pen and made a note on his attendance sheet. Then, almost lazily, he said, "Thank you for your effort, Mr. Carter." He looked down, scribbling something beside Jamal's name. "Not ready." The sound of those two words was louder than chalk breaking. Jamal walked back to his seat, every eye on him. No one said a word. The next 40 minutes passed in slow agony. Every formula Grayson wrote sounded like a reminder that Jamal's intellect was under trial, and every laugh, every side glance, built the wall higher. When class ended, Grayson dismissed everyone with a casual wave. Jamal stayed back, pretending to pack up slowly. He watched the professor move to his desk, stacking papers with deliberate calm. "Professor Grayson?" Jamal asked quietly. Grayson didn't look up. "Yes? A problem. It's not part of the coursework, right?" Grayson sighed. "Mr. Carter, this is calculus, not coloring books. If you can't handle complexity, perhaps you should reconsider your placement." Jamal's chest tightened. "I just wanted to understand." "No," Grayson interrupted sharply. "You wanted exceptions, and in this class you won't get any." He looked up finally, his pale eyes cutting into Jamal's. "We grade based on performance, not pity." Jamal stood still, then nodded once. "Understood." He left the room quietly, but the words burned through his chest. Outside he found his roommate, Malik, leaning against the hallway wall. Malik was tall, confident, and from Detroit, a senior majoring in electrical engineering. He'd been Jamal's guide since freshman year. "Yo, what happened in there?" Malik asked. "Heard he called you out." Jamal exhaled. "Yeah, hit me with a research-level problem just to make me look dumb." Malik's smile faded. "Grayson, right?" "Yeah." Malik shook his head slowly. "Man's been pulling that since before I got here." "You didn't know?" Jamal frowned. "Know what?" "Grayson's got history. Failed 3 black students in a row 2 years back. One appealed, but the board said there wasn't enough evidence of bias." Malik's tone darkened. "One dude dropped out. Another transferred." Jamal felt a slow churn in his stomach. "You serious?" Malik nodded. "Word around is, he does this thing, makes you question yourself until you crash. Then he says you lacked rigor." The hallway felt smaller suddenly. The walls closer. Jamal stared at the classroom door, his reflection faint in the glass panel. "Not this time," he said softly. That night he opened his laptop and started a folder titled Grayson, Documentation. He copied lecture slides, screenshots of assignments, and began jotting down timestamps when Grayson dismissed his answers, when he changed tone. Then he downloaded a discreet voice recorder app. From now on he'd record every lecture, every comment, every insult wrapped in politeness. Weeks passed. The tension grew invisible but sharp. Grayson's tone toward him grew colder. Every time Jamal raised his hand, Grayson ignored him, or worse, called on someone else to repeat his point, pretending it was theirs. But Jamal didn't react. He smiled. He noted. He archived. His recordings grew longer, his notes sharper. The other students began to notice the pattern. But no one spoke. Silence was safer. One late afternoon, as the class ended, Jamal stayed behind again to ask about a grading issue. Grayson's office door was cracked open. He hesitated outside when he heard voices. Grayson was speaking to another professor. "Bright? Maybe, but undisciplined," Grayson was saying. "He's got that defiance in him. They always do." The other voice chuckled softly. "You mean the chip on the shoulder?" "Exactly," Grayson said. "He won't last past midterms." Jamal froze. Every word sank like ice into his spine. He stepped back silently, phone still recording in his pocket. The hall was empty, but his mind was racing. He had proof now, not just of bias but intent. He didn't know it yet, but that single overheard sentence would change everything. Jamal overhears Grayson saying, "He won't last past midterms." The library became his refuge, and his prison. Jamal knew the moment he overheard Dr. Grayson's words. He won't last past midterms. That his place in the class and possibly the university wasn't going to be earned through talent or preparation alone. He'd need evidence, strategy, and resilience. He'd need to weaponize his silence, turn humiliation into fuel, and become impossible to erase. So he moved into the stacks. Not literally, but close enough. The third-floor cubicle near the eastern windows became his base camp. The old desk had a creaky metal lamp, and graffiti etched into its surface. "Chesterton sucks. Justice for Nia," and one cryptic carving that simply said run. He never ran. Jamal spent his nights surrounded by textbooks thicker than bricks, his laptop screen casting harsh light onto tired eyes, and a beat-up binder growing heavier with printed lecture notes, annotated slides, and timestamps from the recordings on his phone. If Dr. Rayson tried to erase him, Jamal would leave a record he couldn't ignore. But the campus noticed, especially the white students in the class. At first it was just looks, curious, then confused, then annoyed. They saw him always buried in formulas, reviewing multivariable limits and approximation theories during lunch, while they played frisbee on the quad. Then came the comments. "You trying to win a Fields Medal or something?" One student, Brad, said while passing his table. Another, Kaylee, with her ever-perfect ponytail, whispered audibly to her friends in the library cafe. "He's probably gunning for extra credit or trying to suck up after that board stunt." They nicknamed him Teach's Pet. Ironically, even though Grayson barely acknowledged him now except to cut him down. But it stung. They didn't see the F on his last assignment. They didn't know he'd answered everything correctly, then double-checked it using Maldlal and cross-verified it against Layman's real analysis solutions. They didn't know Grayson had handed back his paper with red ink scrawled across the top. Unclear method. Resubmit with justification. Unclear method. Jamal had followed the same proof structure Grayson used in class, down to the phrasing. He tried to ask after class, but Grayson dismissed him with a wave. Submit it through the portal. I don't review corrections in person. So he did, twice. Both were marked incomplete. No explanations. The message was loud. Do better. Or get out. He didn't argue. He buried himself deeper. He stopped going to parties, skipped football games, cut social media, slept less, ate worse, and studied like it was the only thing tethering him to this reality. Because it was. He didn't just need to pass the class. He needed to prove he deserved to be at Chesterton in the first place. To his professor, to the system, and if he was honest, sometimes even to himself. One rainy Thursday night, sometime around 1 a.m., he was deep into set theory transitions when he noticed someone hovering in the next row. She looked about mid-20s. Brown skin, high puff of curly hair held with a tortoiseshell clip, thick glasses and a dark hoodie that said Yale Math Grad 23 across the front. She was watching him. He glanced up. "You're Jamal Carter, right?" she asked. He nodded, cautiously. "I'm Layla Dorsey, grad TA in the department. I used to sit in that chair, same corner, same posture, same stress. That's why I recognized it." She offered a tired smile. Jamal blinked. "You know me?" "Only by context," she said, dropping her satchel and pulling out a thick manila folder. "Also, I saw what Grayson pulled last week. That problem? He used that same trick on a student 2 years ago. Kid dropped out." Jamal tensed. "So it's a pattern?" Layla sat down across from him, voice low. "It's more than a pattern. It's a routine." Jamal leaned in. "You said you're a TA. Doesn't that make him your boss?" He was. Until I filed a complaint. Her voice dropped even lower. "Bias, targeted grading, aggressive conduct toward minority students." Jamal's heart thudded. "What happened?" She gave a hollow laugh. "Nothing. Well, nothing helpful. They said I misinterpreted his feedback, that I was reading into things, emotionally. Then they cut my funding for a semester." Jamal sat back, stunned. "That's illegal." "It should be," she said, opening the folder. "But Chesterton's legal team is airtight, and unless you have documented proof, they treat it like academic disagreement." Jamal looked down at his notebook. "I've been recording everything, even when he doesn't know it." Her eyebrows lifted. "Good. Keep doing that." She pulled out a printed grade sheet and laid it on the desk. "This was my research final 2 years ago," she said. "Scored an 88 initially. Then after I challenged one of Grayson's formulas during seminar, it mysteriously dropped to a 6. Jamal scanned the document. "Did you appeal?" "I tried. They said it was a clerical recalibration. Said I must have seen the wrong score posted initially." "Were you the only one?" Jamal asked. "No," she said. "But I was the only one who said something." She pulled out a flash drive. "This has copies of every grade change I tracked from my cohort, plus 3 other black students Grayson graded. One of them got a B on a project everyone else got A's on. Even though he led the group." Jamal's eyes widened. "You're giving this to me?" Layla nodded. You're the first person I've seen in 2 years who didn't fold. You need backup. And receipts. Jamal took the drive slowly, like it was evidence in a court case. In many ways, it was. Why now? He asked quietly. She hesitated. Because if we don't build a wall of truth, they'll bury us in silence. I've seen it happen. I was almost one of them. They sat there in the quiet, the rain tapping against the tall glass windows. The kind of silence that wasn't empty but loaded. Jamal finally whispered, "Thank you." Layla gave a tired smile. "You're not alone, Carter. Don't let him make you think you are." As she stood to leave, Jamal looked down at the flash drive again. It felt heavier than it looked. He now had proof that what was happening to him wasn't new. And maybe, just maybe, it could finally stop here. But as Layla turned away, she paused. "Oh, and one more thing," she said over her shoulder. "You're not imagining it. He doesn't grade you like the others." Jamal looked up. She pulled her phone out, scrolled, and held the screen up to him. A spreadsheet. Side-by-side comparison of assignment rubrics for 4 students, including him. Identical answers. Different scores. Grayson had manually marked Jamal's responses as incomplete on the same answers marked full credit for others. Jamal's breath caught. Layla shows Jamal proof that Grayson altered her grades too. The morning the midterm results were posted, the air in Hamilton Hall buzzed with anxious chatter. The smell of coffee and ink filled the corridor. Students clustered in small groups near the bulletin board, scanning the printout that displayed the Calculus 2 midterm grades. Jamal arrived late that morning, headphones around his neck, eyes shadowed with exhaustion but glimmering with a hint of pride. For the first time in weeks, he felt something close to confidence. He'd spent 2 weeks preparing for that test, night after night, cross-referencing formulas, checking limits, solving past exams, until the margins of his notebook blurred. He'd even found a subtle trick in one of Grayson's examples that everyone else had missed. During the exam, every answer had flowed out of him like instinct. No hesitation, no panic. He had nailed it. He walked up to the crowd, calm and expectant. The page looked chaotic with red-inked grades beside student IDs. He scanned the list quickly. 1A, 2A minuses. A string of B's. Then C's. He found his ID near the bottom. He blinked. Checked again. The same line. The same red letter. 4. A flush of disbelief rose to his face. He read it 3 more times, certain there was a mistake. He remembered every question. His proofs had been flawless, his logic airtight. Someone beside him, a white student from the second row, saw it too. "Damn, man," he muttered. "Rough one, huh?" Jamal didn't answer. His throat felt dry. He turned away, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the hallway noise. He went straight to Grayson's office. The door was half open, the light spilling out into the hallway. Grayson sat at his desk, neat as always, glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, as he read through another stack of papers. Jamal knocked. "Professor, can I talk to you for a minute?" Grayson didn't look up. "If it's about the midterm, all grades are final. Jamal paused. "I need to understand. I worked hard for this. I checked every question twice." Grayson sighed, setting down his pen. "Understanding doesn't change outcomes, Mr. Carter." Jamal stepped closer. "Did you even read my solutions?" Grayson's gaze lifted, cold and deliberate. "I read every word. Your calculations were competent, but your reasoning lacked integrity." "Integrity?" Jamal repeated, stunned. "What does that even mean?" "The math was right. Integrity," Grayson said calmly, "isn't about answers, it's about character." Jamal froze. "Character?" "Yes." Grayson leaned back slightly, folding his arms. "You seem to have a habit of over-explaining your methods, as if you're trying to impress me. Mathematics rewards precision, not performance." "I'm not performing," Jamal said, voice tight. "I'm proving." "Proving what?" Grayson asked. His tone softened to a whisper, so faint it almost sounded like pity. "That you belong here?" The words hit like a quiet punch. Jamal stared at him, mouth parting slightly, unable to speak. Grayson looked away. "If you wish to appeal, you may do so through the academic board. But I must warn you, they tend to trust their faculty." It wasn't advice. It was a warning. Jamal turned and walked out before his composure cracked. He made it to the hallway, his pulse hammering through his skull. He wanted to shout, to demand fairness. But the air around him felt too thick, the walls too narrow. He texted Layla. "Jamal, he failed me. Perfect test. F grade. Layla, come to the library now. Bring your paper if you can. He sat across from her 15 minutes later, test packet trembling slightly in his hands. Layla opened it carefully, flipping through the pages. Her face changed with every turn. Confusion, frustration, disbelief.
These are right, she muttered. Every single one.
Jamal nodded, jaw tight. This step, she said, tapping one page. You even went further than expected. He should have given you extra points for clarity. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He didn't even give partial credit. He marked conceptually weak on number 5. But it's literally copied from his own lecture slide. Layla exhaled sharply. Okay, we're doing this the formal way. That night, Jamal filed his first official complaint. He filled out a 7-page form on the Academic Integrity Portal, citing unfair grading, potential bias, and providing annotated evidence. He attached Layla's comparative rubric, his past assignments, and a typed letter explaining the discrepancy. He didn't expect sympathy, just fairness. 2 weeks later, he got an email. Subject: Academic Appeal Decision. Dear Mr. Carter, after reviewing your submission, the Academic Board has found insufficient evidence of faculty misconduct or grading error. Your final grade stands. He reread it 3 times. Then 4. Insufficient evidence. He sat in silence, the laptop light painting his face in blue. The hum of his dorm's radiator was the only sound in the room. Malik walked in a few minutes later, half-eaten sandwich in hand.
Yo, you look like someone just stole your GPA.
Jamal turned the screen toward him. Malik read the message, frowned, then shook his head. Damn, they really protecting that man. I did everything right, Jamal said quietly. They didn't even ask me to meet. Just brushed it off. That's how they do it, Malik said. They always say there's not enough proof, no matter how loud it is. Jamal rubbed his temples. Then I'll make it louder. He opened his phone, scrolling through recordings. One by one, he labeled each clip date, class topic, timestamps where Grayson made dismissive remarks. Then he began cataloging his assignments against those of other students who'd gotten better grades. Patterns started emerging. Students who matched his answers line for line often got B's or A's. His were consistently marked down or flagged for conceptual inconsistency. Layla met him again that weekend at a cafe off campus. She brought her laptop, a coffee, and a look that said she'd already been deep in research. I pulled some old records, she said. Don't ask how. Let's just say the database isn't as secure as they think. She turned her screen toward him. A spreadsheet opened. Columns of names, course codes, final grade. Jamal leaned closer. What is this? 5 years of Grayson's grade history for Calculus 2. Jamal's eyes scanned the list. Dozens of students. Letter grades scattered across the columns. Layla pointed to a highlighted set of rows. Notice anything? She asked. Each highlighted line had the same tag, blackmail. Every one failed. Jamal's stomach dropped. Every semester, Layla said quietly. Every single black male student he's had in the last 5 years failed or withdrew. No exceptions. He couldn't breathe for a second. You're sure this is real? Layla nodded grimly. Checked against enrollment data. All legit. Even Andre Wallace. He was a senior in 2018. Got a 96 on his midterm. Still failed the class. Why didn't anyone stop him? Jamal asked, voice shaking. They tried, Layla said. The complaints never leave the department. They die in paperwork. Jamal stared at the screen again, the evidence staring back at him, like a mirror of his own struggle. He whispered. He planned this. Layla didn't answer. She didn't need to. That night, Jamal printed everything, emails, grade reports, and the spreadsheet. He pinned them on his dorm wall in rows. Each piece of paper felt like a story of someone erased, someone silenced. He looked at the pattern lines of red, columns of injustice, and realized this wasn't just about him anymore. It was a legacy. A quiet one. A hidden one. But he was about to make it visible. Jamal discovers a pattern. Grayson has failed every black male student for the last 5 years. The next morning, Jamal walked across Chesterton's campus with a manila folder clutched under his arm like a legal brief. The early fall sun filtered through the ancient oaks lining the courtyard, casting long shadows across the worn bricks. His heart thudded against his ribs as he approached the mathematics building. Hollis Hall, a squat gray limestone structure that seemed to sag under the weight of a century of tradition. Room 214 belonged to Dr. Margaret Bellinger, the department chair. She was a tall woman with iron gray hair pulled into a twist, wire-frame glasses, and a quiet reputation. Colleagues called her fair. Students called her strict. Jamal had never spoken to her directly, but her name sat at the top of every administrative form in the department. He knocked lightly, then pushed the door open. She looked up from her desk, blinking behind her glasses. Yes? Dr. Bellinger, I'm Jamal Carter. I'm in Dr. Grayson's Calculus 2 class. I asked for this meeting through the portal. She gestured to a chair. Of course. Please, sit. What's this regarding? Jamal sat and slid the folder across the table. I believe I'm being unfairly targeted, and I have reason to believe there's a pattern of academic discrimination from Dr. Grayson, specifically toward black male students. Bellinger's eyes didn't change immediately. She flipped open the folder, scanning the spreadsheet and the annotated grade reports. Her brow furrowed slightly as she skimmed the patterns, the dates, the consistent Fs assigned to black students. When she reached the comparison of Jamal's midterm to others with identical answers, but higher grades, she paused. This is detailed, she said slowly. Jamal nodded. I've been collecting it since the first week of class. He gave me an unsolvable problem on day 1, then marked me down for tests and assignments I completed correctly. Bellinger leaned back. And what do you believe is the motive? Jamal didn't flinch. I think he sees black students as threats. And I think he uses complexity and subjectivity to fail us out. A long silence stretched across the room. Finally, she folded her hands. Mr. Carter, I won't pretend this isn't disturbing, but allegations of racial bias are delicate. You understand that, don't you? Jamal's jaw clenched. So is having your GPA destroyed for being black. Her lips thinned. I'll review this, but I have to inform you, this kind of investigation, if it proceeds, will not remain private. If this becomes public within the department, it will create ripple effects, some of which may hurt you. Hurt me. I'm saying, she said carefully, you're playing with fire. Grayson is a senior professor. Tenured, published, connected. If this is handled poorly, it could damage your academic future. Jamal stared at her. I'm already being damaged. What else is he going to take? My silence. She looked at him for a long time, then sighed. I will speak to him informally. Quietly. That's the best I can offer right now.
Jamal's stomach dropped. Wait, that's it?
You're just going to have a conversation? I am not dismissing this, she said sharply. But I am warning you. Faculty politics are complex. Grayson is not a man who tolerates being challenged. I don't care, Jamal said quietly. Neither do the students he failed. When he stood to leave, her face remained unreadable. But word got out faster than he expected. Within 48 hours, whispers echoed across the department halls. It started small side glances in the stairwells, sudden silence when Jamal entered a room. Then came the labels. Aggressive, disruptive, arrogant. It spread through invisible wires. Students who used to nod at him stopped making eye contact. A classmate who had once asked to copy his notes now slid his chair 2 inches farther away. In his weekly group seminar, Professor Tillman, Grayson's longtime colleague, said casually in front of others, "We should all be careful about crying wolf over grades. It undermines actual progress." Jamal froze. Tillman never looked at him directly. But the message was clear. By the end of the week, Jamal received an email from the dean's office, requesting a wellness check meeting due to multiple reports of concerning behavior. He forwarded it to Layla with a bitter laugh. Concerning behavior now means asking for fairness. Layla's reply came back within minutes. Layla, you rattled them. This is what backlash looks like. Coded, polished, and dangerous. Be careful. They met again that night, in a dark study corner behind the language archives where few students went. Jamal looked older somehow, like he'd aged 10 years in a week. I went to the chair, he said flatly. She said she'd talk to him informally. That's it. No formal review, no transparency. Layla exhaled. That's not surprising. I told you they protect their own. Grayson has friends all the way up to the provost. Jamal ran his fingers through his hair. Then I need more than grades. I need something that takes this from bias to scandal. She was silent for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop. There's something I've been sitting on, she said. She typed rapidly, pulling up an old file, titled simply Symmetry and Asymptotics. Draft Grayson. What is it? Jamal asked. An unpublished paper. He tried to submit it in 2020 to the Southern Mathematics Review. It was rejected for lack of original contribution. But that's not the full story. She opened another document beside it. Now look at this. Published in 2018 by Dr. Arjun Desai from Stanford. A near-identical paper, almost word for word in parts. Jamal leaned in. His eyes darted between the two texts. The theorems. The diagrams. Even the wording in the abstract. Wait, this is plagiarism. Exactly, Layla said. But since Grayson never published his version, no one pursued it. Jamal's mind spun. If we bring this forward, it changes the narrative, Layla said. Suddenly it's not just a biased professor, it's a dishonest one, with academic fraud in his history. But we'd need Desai to confirm it, Jamal said.
I can try, Layla replied.
I met him at a conference once. He's outspoken about ethics in academia. Jamal stared at the screen, a slow fire building in his chest. This was it. Not just grades.
Not just discrimination.
But deceit. He looked up at her. This could bury him. No, she said, carefully. It could expose him. What he's done to you, to me, to every student he's quietly sabotaged, it finally gets a spotlight. Jamal nodded slowly. He copied both papers to his drive. Outside, the autumn wind picked up, rattling the windows like bones. Jamal sat in silence, the weight of what they now held between them too large to name. Layla finds an unpublished paper by Grayson, with plagiarized content. Jamal has leverage now. Jamal had barely slept in 2 days. The file Layla uncovered had opened a new dimension to the war he was fighting. One that wasn't just personal anymore. Grayson's plagiarism was more than academic theft. It was a crack in the pristine armor of a man the university had treated like untouchable royalty for decades. But when Layla mentioned that this wasn't the first time Grayson had crossed lines with black students, Jamal pressed her harder. There was someone before, she had said quietly. A PhD candidate. Smart, serious, went by Andre Wallace. What happened to him? Jamal asked. He just disappeared. Quietly. One semester he was there, working late in the labs. The next, his name was wiped from everything. No dissertation, no defense, nothing. It sounded like an urban legend, but something in her eyes told Jamal it was real. He started digging. The university's internal database was limited, but Layla had access through an alumni portal. She found an archived seminar flyer from 6 years ago. Andre Wallace, PhD candidate in applied mathematics. Thesis talk scheduled April. There were no records of the talk ever occurring. No transcript, no defense outcome, no degree conferred. Jamal knew that wasn't normal. Even if a PhD candidate failed or dropped out, the record remained. This was intentional erasure, so he searched further. Social media turned up little. A few mentions of an Andre Wallace in Chicago. No public posts, no photos. Then finally, an old blog comment under a math journal article, dated, "Some of us survived the system, not all of us finished it. Andre Wallace." That line haunted Jamal. With Layla's help they traced an old email, a Wallace at quantize. It took Jamal 2 hours to draft the message. Subject, former student. Urgent. Dear Mr. Wallace. My name is Jamal Carter. I'm a student at Chesterton University, currently enrolled in Dr. Leonard Grayson's calculus course. I believe I may be experiencing a pattern similar to something you encountered years ago. If you are willing, I would like to speak with you. I believe what happened to you has been hidden, and I don't think you were alone. Respectfully, Jamal Carter. He didn't expect a reply, but 4 hours later, it came. Subject, Ray, former student. Urgent. Jamal. I've waited 6 years for someone to ask me that question. Call me, now. Number redacted. Andre. Jamal called immediately. Andre's voice was deeper than he expected. Worn. Calm. But there was a heat under the words, like a furnace sealed too long. I know who you are, Andre began. And I know exactly what Grayson's doing. Jamal swallowed. He failed my midterm, tampered with my grades. I have recordings, documentation. Layla Dorsey's helping me. There was a pause. Layla. I remember her. She used to ask too many questions. She still does, Jamal said. Andre chuckled bitterly. Then his tone shifted. He sabotaged me, not just with grades, with my dissertation. Jamal leaned forward in his dorm chair. How? Andre took a breath. My thesis was on wave-based dynamic systems, predictive modeling. I spent 3 years working under Grayson. He supervised my progress, reviewed my drafts, gave me guidance, told me I was on track. Jamal could already hear the turn coming. And then, he asked. And then, Andre continued. A month before my defense, he told the committee that I'd plagiarized an internal research paper, something from a classified think tank. Except I hadn't. I had my own code, my own simulation. But no matter what I showed them, he kept repeating, he violated the standards. Jamal's jaw tensed. Did you report him? Andre laughed, cold and low. To who? The graduate review board. Grayson was on it. The dean? They deferred to the department. They told me I could reapply the next year after further review. But my visa was expiring. My funding was gone. My name was stained. Jamal's voice was barely audible. So you left? Yep, Andre said. Packed up my work, moved to Chicago, got lucky with a friend who brought me into Quantize. But I never finished my PhD. I was erased, just like he wanted. There was a long pause between them. Jamal finally asked, do you still have the files, emails, anything? Something I can use? I've been sitting on them for years, Andre said. I thought maybe one day, someone would come along and care. An hour later, Jamal received a Dropbox folder link titled Chesterton Proof. Inside were dozens of files. Email threads between Andre and Grayson, committee meeting summaries, drafts with timestamps, annotated notes with Grayson's corrections, followed weeks later by contradictory claims that the work was plagiarized. And the most damning, an internal memo from the dean's office acknowledging concerns about Wallace's allegations, but advising the matter be handled quietly to avoid reputational risk. Jamal stared at it for a long time.
It was the smoking gun.
Not just academic abuse, but institutional complicity. Layla reviewed the files with him that night, scrolling silently through page after page. When she reached the dean's memo, she stopped. They buried him, she whispered. And they would have buried me too, Jamal said. Still might. Layla closed the laptop and leaned back. Not if this goes public. Not if you control the narrative. But how? Jamal asked. If we go to the administration, they'll bury this like before. The academic board won't listen. You don't go to them, she said. You go outside. Jamal blinked. Media? Not yet. You go to someone who knows how to weaponize injustice. Someone who fights it for a living. He stared at her. The pieces clicking together. A civil rights attorney. She nodded. They made the call the next morning. The firm was based in Atlanta. The attorney's name was Carissa Denton, a nationally known advocate for educational equity. Jamal had seen her once on TV. Calm, razor-sharp, unshakable. She'd won landmark cases against Ivy Leagues and state schools alike. Jamal sent her a detailed email with a subject line he'd never imagined typing. Subject: racial academic discrimination. Evidence against tenured faculty. He attached the files from Andre, the audio clips, his grade comparison sheets, the plagiarized papers, and Layla's annotated findings. Then he hit send. The weight in his chest didn't lift. But for the first time it shifted. He had launched something real. He stared out the window, watching a group of students laugh near the quad. He wondered how many of them would even believe what was happening inside their own math department. How many would shrug it off because it didn't touch them. But someone had to care. Someone had to speak for the ones who were erased. Jamal forwards the files to a civil rights attorney. Jamal had just returned from the dining hall when the email arrived. It landed without sound. No warning, no alert. Just a single line of unread text waiting in his inbox like a quiet ambush. Subject: academic standing notification. Immediate attention required. From Office of Student Conduct, Chesterton University. He clicked it open, barely breathing. Dear Mr. Carter, following a review of your academic progress and recent faculty reports, your status at Chesterton University has been adjusted to academic probation, effective immediately. This decision is final, unless otherwise appealed through the Academic Performance Review Board within 72 hours. Office of Student Conduct. Jamal stared at the screen. The word probation pulsed in his mind like a siren. He read it again. Then again. It still made no sense. His GPA wasn't failing. He had one disputed grade, 1, and even that was under review, or so he thought. He immediately pulled up his student portal. His academic profile had already been updated. Red banner, bold letters, academic probation. There was no warning, no meeting, no discussion. He clicked on the appeal tab and typed out a full rebuttal, attaching his midterm, Layla's comparison notes, and the memo from Andre Wallace. When he hit submit, a message popped up. Your appeal request has been reviewed and denied. Case closed. Reviewed and denied within 60 seconds. Jamal sat motionless. It wasn't a system glitch. It was an execution. He grabbed his phone and called Layla. She answered on the second ring. They just put me on probation, he said. His voice barely held together, and denied my appeal. I didn't even get a hearing. Layla cursed under her breath. They're closing ranks. Fast. Grayson must have gone to the administration. I haven't missed a single assignment, Jamal said. My average excluding the midterm is above a B. They're not looking at numbers anymore, Layla replied. They're looking at disruption. You challenged the hierarchy. That makes you dangerous. Jamal rubbed his face. So that's it? They can just flag me and shut me down? No, she said. Not if you control the narrative. Jamal didn't answer. I know what you're thinking, Layla continued. It's time. We stop playing quiet. Go public. You're sure? He asked. No one listens to whispers, she said. They respond to noise. By midnight they were back in the library. Jamal hunched over his laptop, eyes bloodshot, typing with surgical precision. Every paragraph was a bullet, every sentence a data point. He detailed everything from the trick problem on the first day, to the tampered grades, the recordings, the spreadsheet of 5 years' worth of failed black male students, and the discovery of Andre Wallace. The post's title was brutal in its simplicity. How my professor is failing me for being black. He didn't use real names yet. He blurred documents, removed email addresses. He wasn't trying to start a war. He was trying to survive one. Layla proofread it, tightened the timeline, helped him shape it like a legal testimony. Then he logged into Reddit through a new account, STEM Ghost. He hesitated only once before hitting post. It went live at 1:18 a.m. It had 20 likes. At 1:35 it had over 100 comments. By 2:00 it was on the front page of Arab Professors from Hell and Arab Black Students. By sunrise, it had gone viral. The comments poured in from across the country. This happened to me at NYU. Different professor. Same playbook. This is why I left STEM altogether. I know that kind of racism. Quiet, insidious, and perfectly designed to ruin you without leaving fingerprints. Thousands of students, black, brown, and even white, shared eerily similar experiences. Professors who changed rubrics after grades were posted, class participation grades used as subjective punishment, complaints dismissed, futures derailed. A hashtag began to emerge. Failed by design. By the next evening, TikTok creators were making explainer videos with dramatic readings of Jamal's post, backed by somber music and math chalkboards flashing in the background. Instagram accounts reposted quotes from his story, like protest art. He said it wasn't about the math. It was about character. They failed me on paper so they didn't have to say it out loud. Jamal sat in stunned silence as the post exploded, his inbox filled with DMs, students thanking him, journalists requesting interviews, former Chesterton grads, admitting they always knew something was off with Grayson. But one message stood out. From Celeste Rodriguez. Subject feature inquiry. The Atlantic Education Desk. Jamal, I read your Reddit post. I'm an education journalist at The Atlantic. Your story reflects a systemic pattern we've been tracking for years. If you're willing to talk, on or off the record, I'd love to hear more. We can protect your identity, if needed. Let me know. Celeste. Jamal forwarded the email to Layla. Her reply came instantly. Layla, that's not just any journalist. Celeste blew the lid off the Ivygate academic fraud case last year. If she runs your story, this doesn't stay inside Chesterton. But Jamal didn't respond right away. He sat back in his chair, the glow of his screen illuminating the wall where all the documents were pinned. Grayson's plagiarized paper, Andre's emails, the failing grade with correct answers. The university had tried to erase him quietly, but now the entire country was watching. A major education journalist emails Jamal asking for an interview. The final project for Calculus 2 was worth 40% of the total grade. An open-ended assignment meant to assess creativity, application, and theoretical depth. It was supposed to be a chance for students to stretch beyond memorized proofs and standardized exams. For most students, it meant regurgitating concepts already taught, tweaked slightly for style. A common project involved applying Fourier transforms to sound waves or analyzing limits in physics models. But Jamal wasn't thinking about safe projects. He had spent the past month building a new framework for identifying discontinuities in piecewise functions, something that had long stumped even advanced students. His method didn't rely on the traditional left-right limit approach, but instead used dynamic variable mapping over convergence intervals. It was theoretical, dense, abstract, but it worked, and it was his. He developed it through weeks of trial and error, hours in the library surrounded by chaos, coffee and notebooks filled with scratched equations. The code he wrote in Python rendered visual simulations of function behavior at potential breakpoints. His approach wasn't in the textbook. It wasn't on the syllabus. It wasn't even something Grayson had ever mentioned in class, which was exactly why Jamal knew he'd hate it. But that didn't stop him. He submitted the paper with his source code, detailed annotations, and a video walkthrough explaining the logic and application. Everything was time-stamped, backed up on his drive, and emailed to himself for verification. The morning grades were released. Jamal didn't even check the portal. He got the notification from a classmate. "Yo, you see this?" Attached was a screenshot of Jamal's project evaluation. Grade, comment, plagiarism detected. Project voided. CD. His breath left his body. He refreshed the portal. The same results stared back at him. No explanation. No citation. No chance to appeal. He closed his laptop and stood. That same hour he walked straight to Layla's office. She read the comment, and her face went pale with rage. "He's accusing you of plagiarism? On something you literally invented?" Jamal didn't speak. He just opened his laptop and pulled up a folder, labeled Continuity Map Project. Inside were dated drafts, screen recordings of him building the code, emails to Layla about early development, and notebook scans from 3 weeks prior, each page showing the mathematical evolution of the theory. "This is airtight," she said, scrolling. "This isn't just plagiarism proof. It's revolutionary." Jamal sat back. He doesn't care. He saw something he didn't recognize and defaulted to the same playbook. Too advanced? Must be stolen. Layla's voice cracked. "Do you realize what this project actually is?"
What? Jamal asked.
"It's publishable. Not just undergrad publishable. I mean real conference-level material. If this gets seen, really seen, it could change how early discontinuity is taught." He stared at her. Then why would he destroy it? Because he didn't understand it. And instead of admitting that, he called it theft. The accusation wasn't just academic. It was deeply personal. For a black student like Jamal to be accused of plagiarism was loaded. It echoed centuries of assumptions, that brilliance wasn't natural, that genius needed validation, that if something was too good, it had to be borrowed. Jamal clenched his fists. "I need someone outside this place to see it. Someone who knows the math." Layla nodded slowly. "I might know who." The next day, she forwarded the project to Dr. Hugo Lenz, a visiting professor from MIT, who was giving a guest lecture the following week at Chesterton. Lenz was known for pioneering real-time convergence models, and had a reputation for sniffing out brilliance in unlikely places. Layla didn't attach Jamal's name to the file. Just the title, Dynamic Breakpoint Identification Using Convergence-Divergence Gradient Mapping. Lenz replied within 6 hours. Subject, unsolicited student submission. "Who wrote this? This is brilliant. I've never seen someone map convergence this intuitively. Not at this level. Is this from one of your grad students?" Layla stared at the email, stunned. She called Jamal immediately. "He called it brilliant," she said. "And he thinks you're a grad student." Jamal let out a sharp breath. "Did you tell him it was mine?" "Not yet. I wanted to check with you first." "Tell him," Jamal said. "Tell him everything." Layla sent the full context, Jamal's level, his grade, the plagiarism accusation. She attached the screenshots of his documentation, timestamps, even a photo of his handwritten notes from the library desk dated 3 weeks prior. 3 hours passed. Then came the response. Subject, Jamal Carter. "This is appalling. I'd like to meet him. Immediately." Jamal stood outside the math department's conference room later that week. Heart pounding. Layla walked beside him. Steady but alert. Inside sat Dr. Hugo Lenz, mid-50s, sharp suit, glasses perched low on his nose, a silver pen in his hand. His eyes lit up when Jamal entered. "You're Carter," he said, standing to shake his hand. Jamal nodded. "Yes, sir." Lenz gestured to the seat. "I read your paper 3 times, and then I rechecked my own model for convergence theory, because I thought I'd missed something." He smiled. "Turns out you saw something the rest of us didn't." Jamal didn't speak. He wasn't sure how. I've taught at MIT for 23 years, Len said. I've supervised postdocs, PhD candidates. What you built at your age isn't just unique, it's generational. Layla looked at Jamal, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you, Jamal said, voice shaking. But they gave me a 0. Len's smile faded. I read the accusation. Baseless, lazy, and frankly, offensive. Jamal finally breathed. What happens now? You'll present this at the symposium next month, Len said. I'll sponsor you. Full credit. Under your name. Jamal froze. You mean, publish? Absolutely. This deserves peer review. Then Len's voice dropped. And as for the professor who failed you, let's just say, I don't keep things quiet. Jamal didn't know whether to laugh or cry. For the first time since stepping into Grayson's class, he felt the ground under his feet solidify. He left the building that evening not as a student drowning in accusation, but as a mathematician whose work had just been validated by one of the field's top minds. Outside, the wind carried the scent of autumn. Inside his email inbox, another storm was brewing. A visiting mathematician from MIT reads Jamal's method and calls it brilliant. The article dropped on a Thursday morning, published under the education section of The Atlantic. It bore a title that didn't pull punches: falsified grades, racial targeting, and academic erasure inside the system that failed Jamal Carter. Celeste Rodriguez's byline carried weight in education journalism. When she published, people listened. But this piece hit harder than anyone expected. It wasn't just a profile. It was an exposé. The story opened with the infamous line Grayson had whispered behind his office door. He won't last past midterms. From there it unraveled into a tightly constructed timeline. The unsolvable problem. The failed midterm despite correct answers. The dataset showing every black male student under Grayson had flunked. The accusation of plagiarism. Then came the audio. Layla had given Celeste access to several of Jamal's recordings. In one, Grayson could be heard saying, "Confidence without competence is dangerous, especially with students like him." Students like him. That phrase echoed across every reader's screen. Social media erupted. Within 2 hours, the article had over 300,000 views. By noon, Jamal was right. Was trending across TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. A popular TikTok creator, known for breaking down academic scandals, posted a 2-minute video overlaying Grayson's audio, with images of Jamal's annotated midterm, the grade discrepancies, and a clip of Dr. Hugo Lenz from MIT calling Jamal's method brilliant. That video hit 1 million views in under 6 hours. By evening, students began gathering on the Chesterton University quad, holding cardboard signs reading, "We are not your curve. Academic racism is still racism. Grayson must go." They weren't Chesterton students. Word had spread to nearby colleges. Howard, Spelman, Morehouse, Emory. Busloads of students arrived over the weekend, joining in solidarity. Local news stations parked their vans outside campus gates. Then national media followed. CNN, MSNBC. Even BBC World ran a short segment on it. The university tried to buy time. First, a bland press release. "We are conducting an internal review." Then, a follow-up statement. "We respect the rights of our students to voice concerns." But pressure kept mounting. 1 day later, Celeste released a follow-up article. This time, she published excerpts from Andre Wallace's emails showing how his dissertation was derailed. Layla's testimony confirmed patterns of grade manipulation. The documents, the audio, the spreadsheet. It all painted a picture too coordinated to dismiss. On Monday morning, the Chesterton administration held a closed-door meeting. By that evening, an announcement appeared on the university's homepage. Effective immediately, Professor Leonard Grayson has been placed on administrative leave, pending a full external investigation. It was the headline Jamal had waited weeks to see. But the moment it arrived, it landed hollow. Because despite all that had happened, despite the public outcry, the protests and the mounting evidence, he was still on academic probation. He received no apology, no reversal, no formal acknowledgement that he had been wronged. Instead, an email from the Office of Student Conduct simply read, "Your current academic status remains in place as we evaluate broader concerns. We appreciate your cooperation." Jamal read the message twice, then closed his laptop, leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "They're trying to win by waiting," Layla said later that night. "Let the fire burn out. Hope people move on." But it wasn't over. That weekend, Jamal received a new message. This one carried a different tone entirely. From Dr. Hugo Lenz. Subject: Invitation, International Mathematical Sciences Symposium. Jamal.
After review by the symposium board, and with personal endorsement from myself and 2 other reviewers, we are inviting you to present your discontinuity mapping method at the IMS Symposium in Berlin this spring.
We will cover travel, accommodations, and presentation support. We hope this begins the recognition your work deserves. With respect, Hugo. Jamal stared at the screen. He had never been outside the country.
Never imagined his name on any conference agenda.
But now, not only was he being invited, he was being sponsored. He slowly closed his laptop, stunned. The MIT mathematician offers Jamal a chance to present at an international symposium. Jamal couldn't stop staring at the invitation from Dr. Lenz. The lines didn't look real, like something from a different life. Present your discontinuity mapping method. Sponsored. In Berlin. His name would appear on an international academic stage, not as a footnote in someone else's research, but as the origin. For a brief flickering moment, hope had weight. Then came the email. It arrived late Friday evening from the Office of Global Academic Affairs. Subject: International Travel Restrictions. Academic Review Status. Dear Mr. Carter, due to your current academic standing, your application to present at the IMS Symposium in Berlin has been denied. Per university policy, students on academic probation are ineligible for official representation until status is resolved. We appreciate your understanding. Office of Global Academic Affairs. Jamal reread it, in disbelief. It didn't mention the symposium by name, didn't reference his groundbreaking work. Just a cold bureaucratic block. You're not allowed to represent us, not even for something you created. He forwarded the email to Layla, who replied within minutes. Layla, they're punishing you for winning. This isn't about probation. This is about control. Jamal sat in silence for a long time. Then he opened Twitter. Chesterton just blocked me from presenting my original research in Berlin. Work they accused me of plagiarizing, until MIT called it brilliant. Because I'm still on probation. You can't make this up. He hit send. It exploded. By morning, Let Jamal Speak was trending alongside Jamal Was Right. Academics, students, journalists, and public figures chimed in. Screenshots of the rejection email circulated with fire emoji captions. One professor from Princeton wrote, "If a student creates something worthy of international recognition, your policy should be to support him, not silence him." A black mathematician from Stanford posted, "I've reviewed Jamal Carter's work. It's advanced, authentic, and innovative. Chesterton's conduct is academic suppression. Full stop." The backlash wasn't just social, it was organized.
An education equity nonprofit, Break the Curve Foundation, reached out to Jamal directly, their mission to support marginalized students in elite spaces. Their offer cover all travel, lodging, and legal fees if necessary.
Within 48 hours, Jamal had new flight tickets, a paid hotel reservation in Berlin, and the kind of backing Chesterton couldn't touch. The university responded with silence. No apologies. No reversals. No recognition. It didn't matter anymore. Because Jamal was going to Berlin anyway. The conference room was built like a concert hall. Tiered seating, minimalist design, and a massive screen that dwarfed the podium. Jamal stood backstage, adjusting the knot of his tie. Layla had helped him choose a suit, charcoal gray with a slim fit. Simple, professional, unmistakably his own. Dr. Lenz met him behind the curtain. Nervous? Jamal nodded. Lenz smiled. Good. Means you care. But remember, this is your stage. You didn't sneak your way here. You earned it. When Jamal stepped up to the podium, the room hushed. The moderator introduced him as an undergraduate researcher from Chesterton University, whose work has gained international attention. No mention of the controversy. Just the math. Jamal took a breath, then began. He walked the audience through the core logic of his method, how traditional discontinuity analysis relied on static boundaries, while his model used dynamic convergence shifts. He showed code simulations that adapted to noisy data, explained how his process could be applied to physics models, machine learning systems, even medical signal processing. Then he paused. I developed this model, he said, not in a lab or under ideal conditions, but in a campus library, after being accused of not belonging, of being dishonest, of fabricating work I poured months into. The room fell still. He continued. Even after my project was proven original by external experts, I was blocked from presenting it. Not because it wasn't valid, but because the institution that tried to erase me couldn't admit it was wrong. Eyes across the room narrowed. Pens paused mid-note. The subtext was clear and raw. He clicked to the final slide, a simulation loop showing his model outperforming standard methods in identifying sharp discontinuities. "I'm not here to prove I belong anymore," he said. "I'm here because I know I do." Silence. Then it started. One person stood, then another, then more. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet. A standing ovation. Not out of pity, not out of politics, but because brilliance had just spoken, and they knew it. Jamal's breath caught. He stepped back from the podium, eyes wide, heart pounding. He didn't cry, but something broke open inside him, a release that had waited too long. After the presentation, several mathematicians approached him. One invited him to collaborate on a joint paper. Another said they'd nominate him for a fellowship. A third asked if he'd ever considered a PhD at Oxford. He didn't know how to process it. Layla called that night from campus. "I saw the video," she said. "I've never been prouder of anything." "Thank you," he said quietly. She paused. "Are you ready for the next wave?" Jamal frowned. "What do you mean?" She forwarded him a screenshot. A legal firm's letterhead. A statement from Huntington and Bloom LLP, representing Leonard Grayson. Subject: Notice of pending legal action. We represent Dr. Leonard Grayson in matters related to recent public statements and media coverage. Our client is preparing to file a defamation lawsuit against Jamal Carter for statements made online and to national media outlets. Please direct all future communication through legal counsel. Huntington and Bloom LLP. Jamal read the words, pulse rising. Grayson wasn't done. Now he was fighting back. Grayson's attorney threatens a defamation lawsuit. They tried to hide him in legal threats. But Jamal Carter was already everywhere. For weeks the internet hadn't stopped talking. His Berlin presentation now lived on YouTube, subtitled in 6 languages, and his story had been folded into conversations about academic gatekeeping, institutional racism, and the invisible wounds left by quiet discrimination. Yet Grayson remained silent. No public statement, no apology, no interview, until one day that changed. Chesterton's media team announced that Dr. Leonard Grayson would appear live on Point of Proof, a nationally syndicated debate program, where academics and thought leaders hashed out controversial topics before a primetime audience. The university's press release called it an opportunity for dialogue and clarity, but everyone knew what it really was: damage control. The episode was advertised like a courtroom battle. On one side, Dr. Leonard Grayson, tenured mathematician, published scholar. On the other, the public record emails, audio clips, published accusations. Jamal wasn't invited to the show. They said it was to avoid conflict. But Layla called it what it was. They don't want the truth in the room. They want to manage the illusion of fairness. Jamal sat in his dorm with Layla, Malik and 2 other students watching from his laptop. Social media counted down like it was a boxing match. When the program opened, the host introduced Grayson, with careful neutrality. Grayson appeared calm. Too calm, dressed in a conservative navy suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his voice steady and rehearsed. "I've taught for over 30 years, he began. "I've mentored thousands of students, and I've never let race influence my standards." The host leaned in. "So you deny the allegations?" "Absolutely," Grayson said. The student in question submitted work that raised legitimate concerns. Academic probation wasn't a punishment, it was protocol. Any suggestion that it was racially motivated is deeply irresponsible. The words felt prepackaged, polished within an inch of their meaning. Then the host said something unexpected. "We've received some recordings submitted by the students' team. We've reviewed them for authenticity. We'd like to play one now." Grayson blinked. The clip played. His voice filled the studio. "He won't last past midterms. Then, students like him." A brief, suffocating silence followed. Grayson tried to recover. Context matters. "That was a private conversation." "But you were talking about Jamal Carter," the host interrupted, "and you assumed he would fail, before any final grades were even posted." Grayson shifted. He showed patterns. He was combative, unwilling to accept correction. More clips played. Him calling Jamal statistically doomed, calling Layla a distraction, calling Andre Wallace a cautionary tale. The camera zoomed in slowly on his face, as his carefully built mask began to slip. Then the call came in. A young woman's voice cracked. shaking. Hi. I'm sorry. I wasn't going to call, but I can't stay quiet anymore. The host softened. You're live. Please continue. I was a student of Dr. Grayson in 2019. I was pre-med. He gave me a D in calculus I. I went to his office to ask about it. He told me girls like me weren't built for math. The studio went dead silent. She sobbed through the rest. How she switched majors. How she lost confidence. How she blamed herself. Until Jamal's story surfaced. The camera panned to Grayson. He didn't deny it. Didn't apologize. He just sat there, frozen. The host turned to the camera. We'll be right back. The commercial break couldn't wash the weight from the moment. When they returned, Grayson's tone had changed. This is character assassination, he said quietly. I've been defamed, slandered. But no one was buying it anymore. By the time the show ended, "In Grayson Must Go" was trending globally. That same night, Chesterton University issued a statement. In light of new evidence presented during public broadcast, we are launching an external, independent investigation into Dr. Leonard Grayson's conduct. It will remain suspended pending the outcome. Layla exhaled. They finally folded. Jamal didn't smile. He didn't cheer. Because he knew institutions didn't fold from justice. They folded from exposure. Later that night, a new message popped into his inbox. From No Name, at Chesterton. Subject, Ugent. You need to see this. No greeting. No name. Just one line of text. He's not the only one. Check the Dean's Review Committee from attached a single document labeled Internal Memo Retraction 2017-EFT. A whistleblower from inside the university contacts Jamal, anonymously. The anonymous email sat unopened in Jamal's inbox for nearly 10 minutes. He stared at it, the subject line throbbing in his mind like a warning bell. Urgent. You need to see this. Layla was the first to speak. Open it, she said. Her voice was low, serious. Jamal clicked. The email was plain. No greeting, no footer, no name. Just one cryptic sentence, and a single attachment. He's not the only one. Check the Dean's Review Committee from attached a PDF labeled Internal Memo Retraction. Jamal opened the file slowly. The first page was a memo dated March 2017, marked confidential at the top. It had the letterhead of Chesterton University's Office of Academic Conduct. Under the heading, Complaint Review. Dr. Leonard Grayson. The content made Jamal's hands tremble. The document outlined a formal complaint filed by a graduate student 5 years ago. The student, unnamed in the memo, accused Dr. Grayson of hostile supervision, biased grading, and retaliatory recommendations that cost him a postdoc position. Jamal read faster, eyes scanning every line. Grayson had been under internal review by the Dean's Academic Review Committee, the same committee currently responsible for maintaining Jamal's probation status. The memo admitted that certain patterns of concerning behavior were observed, and that Grayson's tone in correspondence with minority students was flagged as dismissive, and in some cases demeaning. And then came the buried line, deep in the final paragraph. Given the potential for reputational damage, the committee recommends shelving the complaint and classifying the file under discretionary review. The matter will be archived, not escalated. Layla gasped. They buried it. Jamal flipped to the second page. An internal email string between Grayson and 2 senior administrators. One of the emails was from Grayson himself, dated February 2017, responding to the student's complaint. It read, "These students come in with chips on their shoulders and think they're owed something. Carter's just the latest. Statistically, they don't last, and we both know why." Jamal froze. He said my name. Layla stared at the screen. In 2017, you weren't even in college yet. He scrolled further. There it was, emails discussing Grayson's performance evaluations, specifically referencing black students and using phrases like overconfident and entitled, and in one line, referring to them as statistically doomed from the outset. Jamal stood up from his chair. His whole body was shaking. They've known, he whispered. All this time, they knew. Layla's eyes burned, and they let it keep happening. Within hours, the file was in the hands of Celeste Rodriguez. Jamal didn't hesitate this time. He gave her everything. His name, his photo, the email chain, the memo, the whistleblower tip. Celeste responded in all caps. This is a cover-up. She published the new story within 24 hours. Title: They Knew. Internal emails reveal Chesterton protected professor despite racism complaints. by Celeste Rodriguez. The headline exploded. Major outlets reprinted her story. MSNBC brought on a legal analyst to break down the cover-up. A former Ivy League dean appeared on CNN and called it one of the clearest cases of institutional racism I've seen in 20 years. Jamal's inbox filled again, this time with lawyers, whistleblowers, and former Chesterton employees. A former TA emailed anonymously. He used to grade black students last, said it helped him maintain objectivity. A retired secretary from the academic office. I saw the 2017 file. We were told to lock it in the discretionary drawer. The university issued a panic statement. Chesterton University condemns racism in all forms and is committed to investigating these new revelations fully. But no one was buying it. Outside Chesterton's administrative building, a new wave of protests erupted. Hundreds of students gathered under banners, reading, "You knew." He said statistically doomed. You agree. Fire them all. This time students weren't just chanting Grayson's name. They were naming deans, administrators, committee members. The scandal had morphed into a reckoning. National figures spoke out. Senator Kamala Hensley posted, "No student should be erased by the very institution that promised to elevate them. Chesterton must answer for this." The pressure reached a boiling point when a group of civil rights attorneys, backed by the ACLU, demanded a federal investigation. And it came. That same night, Jamal received a letter, this time certified, printed on government letterhead, from United States Department of Education Office for Civil Rights. Subject: formal notification of investigation. Case: Dear Mr. Carter, this letter serves as confirmation that the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights has initiated a formal investigation into the racial discrimination claims and administrative misconduct at Chesterton University. Your cooperation will be requested during this process. Sincerely, Office for Civil Rights. Jamal read the letter in stunned silence. Layla, beside him, whispered, "They're coming." He looked at her. "Do you think anything will actually change?" She didn't smile. But she didn't look away. "Not unless we make it. The Department of Education opens a formal civil rights investigation." Jamal Carter's name was no longer whispered behind closed doors. It was printed on journal covers. His paper, Dynamic Breakpoint Identification, using convergence-divergence gradient mapping, had been peer-reviewed, revised, and officially published in the Journal of Applied Mathematical Innovation, a top-tier academic publication. His name appeared at the top in bold, followed by a footnote that stunned readers, originally submitted as an undergraduate research project. That single sentence sent a message loud enough to echo across universities everywhere. The boy they tried to erase had become undeniable. Within weeks of publication, invitations began pouring in. Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Georgia Tech, UCLA. Every email said the same thing in different words. Come speak. Share your story. Teach us what we missed. Jamal didn't just accept the speaking engagements. He reshaped them. At each school, he refused to speak only about math. Instead, he blended his method with narrative. How institutions praised innovation until it wore black skin. How policy could quietly assassinate a student's future without ever using a slur. How excellence wasn't enough when the system was built to doubt it. He turned every lecture into a mirror and dared the audience to look. But Jamal didn't stop there. He built a platform, STEM Unmuted. It was part mentorship hub, part digital archive, part resistance toolkit. Black and brown STEM students could anonymously submit grievances, upload examples of discriminatory grading, and connect with legal support. Jamal organized webinars, invited guests like Layla and Andre Wallace, and even included a fellowship directory for marginalized students pursuing research. The site went viral in academic circles. One tweet summed it up best. They tried to end Jamal Carter with an F. He built a movement instead. And still, through it all, Chesterton remained silent. Until one Friday morning, Jamal was summoned formally. A letter from the dean's office arrived requesting a meeting to revisit academic standing and extend formal acknowledgement of recent accomplishments. Layla raised an eyebrow when she read it. You think this is an apology? It's a PR cleanup, Jamal said flatly. Still, he went. The dean's suite hadn't changed. The same glass walls, the same silence wrapped in fake professionalism. Dean Harold Wexler greeted him with an outstretched hand and a thin, practiced smile. Jamal, he said, we've been following your success closely. First, let me congratulate you. What you've achieved is extraordinary. Jamal didn't shake his hand. You put me on probation without a hearing. The dean's smile faltered slightly. Yes, and for that we owe you an apology. Mistakes were made. Mistakes were allowed. Jamal corrected. Repeatedly. For years. Wexler nodded, voice softening. We want to make things right. Your probation has been fully expunged. Your record is clean. We're also offering a formal letter of commendation from the faculty board. Jamal stared at him. You think that a race is what happened? We believe it's a start. Jamal leaned forward. Then here's my start. Implement a bias review system for grading. Mandate cultural sensitivity training for STEM faculty. Create a board with real student representation. And put someone on it who looks like me. Wexler paused. Those are major shifts. Jamal didn't blink. So was surviving this university. The dean gave no answer. Just that empty administrative stillness. Jamal stood. I don't need your praise. I need your policies to stop bleeding people like me. He left without the letter. Outside, Layla was waiting. How'd it go? He offered to polish the surface. Jamal said. I told him I'd rather break the mirror. Later that week, the campus erupted once again. The Board of Trustees, under pressure from federal investigators and national backlash, issued a final decision. Effective immediately, Professor Leonard Grayson has been terminated from his position at Chesterton University. Students celebrated across the quad. But before the week was over, a new headline appeared. Former professor files lawsuit alleging reverse racism. After firing, Grayson's attorneys claimed his firing was politically motivated, that the university caved to a social media mob, that Grayson had been a victim of defamation and was now pursuing legal action against both Chesterton University and Jamal Carter. The man who once dismissed Jamal as statistically doomed was now playing the victim. Grayson is fired, but he sues for reverse racism. The courtroom didn't feel like justice. It felt like a game of optics. Marble floors, oak paneling, rows of padded benches where people either stared at you or deliberately looked away. But it wasn't the setting that made Jamal uneasy. It was the way Grayson entered. Like he'd rehearsed it. Pressed navy suit. Calm posture. Eyes scanning the room as if he owned it. He was suing not just Chesterton University, but Jamal Carter, alleging emotional distress, professional defamation, and career sabotage due to racially motivated retaliation. His attorneys framed him as a model educator, a casualty of mob culture, and a scapegoat of academic overcorrection. It was, in their words, reverse discrimination. The phrase hung in the courtroom like smoke. Heavy. Stagnant. Designed to suffocate. Jamal sat quietly at the defense table beside Carissa Denton, the civil rights attorney who had taken his case when no one else would. Her gray curls framed a face as sharp as her cross-examinations. She believed in him, not as a client, but as a truth she refused to let the system bury. Don't worry, she whispered before the proceedings began. We've got the truth. All they've got is framing, and frame they did. Grayson's lawyers painted a picture of a misunderstood professor, targeted by an aggressive student with an activist agenda. They referenced Jamal's viral posts, the Reddit expose, and his published op-ed as an orchestrated takedown built on half-truths. He was branded a racist without due process, the lead attorney said. His career destroyed, his name dragged through the mud before he could defend himself. Grayson took the stand early. He wept. He spoke about his decades of service, his deep love for teaching, his heartbreak over watching his legacy erased by an angry student and social media mobs. He choked up when talking about losing tenure. The cameras ate it up. Every local station had a live feed. Clips of Grayson's trembling voice aired on nightly news. Commentators debated the case like it was political theater. And then, it was Jamal's turn. He didn't speak with fire. He spoke with facts. Carissa led the questioning like a maestro. Calm, steady, lethal. They showed the original midterm graded F despite correct answers. They played the recording where Grayson said statistically doomed. They presented the spreadsheet of 5 years' worth of failed black students under Grayson's name. Andre Wallace testified via Zoom, detailing how his dissertation was sabotaged. Layla took the stand too, recalling how she had been silenced when she raised the alarm. When asked how it felt to be accused of plagiarism on original research, Jamal responded quietly, I expected him to misunderstand my work. I didn't expect him to erase it. The courtroom was still. Carissa leaned in. Did you ever want revenge? Jamal looked at Grayson. No, he said. I wanted dignity. I wanted the truth to be heavier than the lie. On the third day, the unexpected happened. A surprise witness, one of Grayson's former colleagues from the mathematics department, came forward. Professor Elaine Yu, tenured and respected. She hadn't spoken publicly in years. But now, under oath, she did. She revealed that Grayson had once said in a faculty meeting, "We need to raise the bar. We're admitting students who don't have the culture for this kind of rigor." He wasn't talking about grades. He was talking about race. Grayson's face twisted in silent rage. When it was his attorney's turn to cross-examine her, Professor Yu didn't flinch. "I stayed silent too long," she said. "But this case, it isn't just about one student. It's about every one of us who let the system humiliate brilliance and call it standard practice." By the final day, public sentiment had shifted. Grayson's tears were no longer believable. His calm, calculated words read as performance. Jamal, meanwhile, had become a symbol of a generation that refused to shrink beneath the weight of gatekeeping. The judge returned a verdict in under 3 hours. Grayson's case was thrown out with prejudice. The court ruled in favor of Jamal and affirmed that his claims of academic discrimination were credible, well documented, and reflect systemic failures. But that wasn't all. In a rare move, the judge issued a written opinion, one that would ripple through universities across the country. This court recognizes the insidious nature of academic racism, not in slurs or overt discrimination, but in the subtle manipulation of standards, the gaslighting of students, and the weaponization of bureaucracy to punish dissent. Institutions must not be allowed to punish integrity while shielding bigotry. The ruling made headlines everywhere. The case was cited within weeks in other lawsuits. Policy advisors used it as a model. Universities began re-evaluating grading transparency. Some called it the Carter precedent. As reporters swarmed Jamal outside the courthouse, one question came louder than the rest. "What's next for you?" He didn't answer. Because the answer came the next morning. An envelope arrived at his dorm. Heavy paper. Gold MIT seal. Inside was a single letter. "Dear Mr. Carter, your contributions to applied mathematics and your leadership in educational justice have not gone unnoticed. We would be honored to invite you to join the MIT Department of Mathematics as a visiting lecturer for the next academic year. We believe your voice belongs in every lecture hall. Sincerely, Dr. Hugo Lenz." Jamal is offered a teaching position at MIT. At 26 years old, Jamal Carter sat in the lecture hall of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, not as a guest speaker or obscure adjunct, but as one of the youngest professors on their mathematics faculty. The hallway outside his office was lined with photographs of historical figures in mathematics. Black, white, female, male, yet his mirrored image on the wall beneath the title, Carter J, felt like a quiet revolution. Jamal's rise didn't happen overnight. It had been the slow burn of injustice, intelligence, and insistence. His method, the convergence-divergence gradient, mapping for breakpoint identification, had not just been published. It had been adopted. Courses at universities from Georgia Tech to Stanford now featured units named after his approach. The syllabus slide read, "Carter Method, Mapping Discontinuities with Dynamic Gradients." And students, including black and brown students who once felt invisible in those halls, now saw his name next to it. On a crisp spring morning, Jamal walked into his first class as Professor Carter. He greeted 96 faces representing 30 nations of origin, dozens of languages, and varying degrees of math anxiety. He scanned the room with a steady gaze, silent pride folding into his expression. He wrote on the board, "Welcome. We reconstruct the curves they tried to flatten." The lecture began with an overview of classical methods, left-hand limits, right-hand limits, epsilon delta definitions. Then he paused and said, "Those methods are built for a world where change is slow. But our system's physical, computational, social demand something faster, more adaptive." He clicked a remote and the screen behind him displayed one of his simulations, a fractal of colored waves collapsing into sharp breaks, dynamically analyzed. Students leaned in, smartphones crept out to photograph the image. In that moment, he wasn't just teaching math, he was teaching resistance. He was demonstrating that what is assumed impossible is often only unwanted. After class, a student approached him, a young black woman building a robotics project. She said quietly, "I always thought people like me didn't belong in advanced math, but seeing you makes me believe I can." She left before he could reply, but her words echoed like proof of purpose. Outside his classroom, Jamal's office door bore a plaque, "Professor of Applied Mathematics and Equity, in STEM." Nobody had asked to include the second title. He added it himself. Inside the office, boxes of letters from students lined one shelf, requests for mentorship, stories of discrimination, appeals for help. He didn't meet each student one-on-one. He created a program, the Wallace Foundation for Marginalized STEM Students, named in honor of Andre Wallace. The foundation's mission provides scholarships, legal support for academic bias, and open access to research resources anyone could use without fee. Every drafted grant, every flyer, every press release said the same tagline: "When brilliance blooms, so do we." One afternoon he sat in the foundation's video call with Layla Dorsey, now a senior research lecturer, and a cohort of 40 mentees online. A young man in Nairobi, a woman in São Paulo, 2 brothers in Detroit. They all logged in from different time zones. A camera lit their faces, eager, tired, hopeful. Jamal addressed them. "You are the algorithm that disrupts the system, not with violence, but with excellence." The screen filled with nods and fists raised, not in rage, but in readiness. Meanwhile, Chesterton University remained in Jamal's rearview mirror but refused to stay silent. At a formal ceremony, the dean extended a public apology and offered him an honorary doctorate. Jamal accepted neither. When asked why, his reply was measured. "I don't need your diploma to exist, I need your system to change." He subsequently presented the university with a policy document, mandating transparent grading, external audits for high-risk courses, and a requirement that faculty undertake racial equity training annually. The university adopted parts of it. The rest became a benchmark for other institutions. The unexpected twist: one of Grayson's former protégés, a PhD candidate, Jamal, had once taught briefly as a guest lecturer, emailed him a confession. She admitted that she allowed the culture of silence to persist, that she graded black students more harshly under Grayson's supervision. She confessed she was now shifting her research to analyze pure complicity and academic bias, and she asked Jamal to include her as co-author on a paper. Jamal agreed. It meant more than a research win, it meant accountability coming from within the system. That evening, Jamal returned to Chesterton's campus, the place where this journey had nearly derailed him. He walked across the quad alone, leaves swirling around his feet. Students recognized him, whispered his name, and many stopped to say thanks. He didn't raise his head. He just walked. He stood in front of the same building where his probation letter had been sent, looked up at the stone facade, and felt the final weight lift. He visited the mathematics building. Inside one of the old classrooms he once sat in, now empty after hours, he pulled out his mobile phone and recorded a short video. "I stood here thinking I didn't belong. I was wrong. I did belong. You do too." He posted it later for his mentees. The view count surpassed 30,000 within hours. Now, when people asked what he was, professor, mentor, trailblazer, they missed the point. He was simply proof that a student targeted by math could rewrite history. Proof that a foundation built for the marginalized could reshape an elite institution. Proof that one person's fight becomes a generational mandate. Late that night, Jamal stood on the balcony of his MIT apartment, overlooking the city lights of Cambridge. His phone buzzed with messages: invitation to write a book, request for a keynote at the White House STEM initiative, a student asking if he would be their PhD advisor. He smiled, not because he had won, but because the war had changed. They tried to silence him with math. He answered with history. They tried to silence him with math. He answered with history. If you've ever been told you don't belong, if you've ever had to work twice as hard just to be seen, then Jamal's story is yours too. No one should have to outsmart racism just to survive school. Type yes if you believe brilliance has no color. Subscribe if this broke your heart and opened your eyes.